Okay, let's round out our discussion of the so-called Neolithic or agricultural revolution. But hopefully you've seen by now it's a little bit more than just some simplistic definition of a light switch being flipped on and then suddenly everyone is farming. There's also a range of behaviors, social systems that can be established, paces of change as well. That it wasn't, for some groups it was very rapid. For some groups it was millennia long transition, and for some people that transition never really took hold. It was also not simply transition from hunting and gathering into farming. You could also be a herder, which would also necessitate, at least for some types of herding of animals, some type of mobility, which means that you could have had semi-sedentary communities as well as sedentary communities. But this establishment of property and territoriality necessitated negotiations amongst people, either through violence. You either take what territory you want, or you cooperate and communicate and negotiate. I have a supplementary lecture on our page that discusses my work of the establishment, looking into the establishment of one of these places of congregation that might have actually served to mediate groups that had different survival strategies all in the same region coming together and perhaps learning how to cooperate and how to organize that a little bit. You think of a big giant feast with multiple communities coming together at different times of the year, or maybe at different years. What do? Well, you tell stories. You try and establish yourself as a leader of either your community or maybe of multiple communities. You exchange marriage partners. You exchange goods. You maybe wrestle and fight each other. You feast and you make up and you spend late nights making friends or maybe establishing new enemies. But this is human life, right? So we have these little glimpses. We can't go back into the past, but we have these little glimpses of what life might have been like. And so we've got to make the most of the evidence that we have. The remaining 4 regions that we're going to look at are big regions, some of them at least, and they'll become a little bit, we'll have more to say about them in future chapters. But the evidence for this transition is not as sizable in these other regions, transition from hunting, gathering to farming and herding, as we've seen in Mesoamerica and North America and Mesopotamia, Europe. So this has all been arranged in your book into one chapter that has 4 different regions, and I'm gonna try and do these as quickly as possible because the evidence and the information is in your book. I'll let you read that. But these regions are, and this is part of your learning objectives, the role of pastoralism and the timing of the introduction of pottery in Africa. That's one region. The nature and significance of the archaeological site at Cook Swamp in New Guinea. The relationship between the origin of village life and domestication in the Andes, that's in South America, and the evidence of the 2 centers of domestication in China. Now, obviously, Africa, New Guinea, South America, and China are huge places that we're going to have a lot to say about later on. But like I said, the evidence for this early transition from hunting and gathering into farming and herding can be summarized in in maybe a smaller space. We'll have more to talk about as we learn more about this development into social complexity later on. So these areas are going to come back up. And we'll discuss them more in future chapters. But what we're talking about here is simply the evidence that we have for the transition from hunting and gathering into a new form of subsistence. What evidence do we have for that, and what does it tell us about their societies? So that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to break this down into a few videos so we can just sort of focus on each of these regions. So I'll see you then.